order to save you some of the confusion, I wanted to go over some of the site settings in Elementor as well. If you're a beginner in Elementor and WordPress, you'll often find yourself in some weird situation where you don't know how to fix a problem you're facing. And to eliminate some of these common problems, I wanted to go over some of the settings and walk you through some of the things that might be causing issues you're facing on your website. So without much talking, let's get right into the video. We'll start off by going over the Elementor settings itself. So here we have like the general settings for Elementor. One thing that we covered earlier as well is the importance of checking these two boxes when you're using the theme and the global styles, because otherwise they won't work correctly. Something else that you definitely need to or should be looking for is that these post types are actually checked on. Usually they will be by default, but just so that you know that this is also something that could be causing an issue for you. Now in the style section, these style settings that were previously there are now part of the theme builder and theme styles, and we'll go in there in a bit as well. But yeah, so just so you know, these are in the Elementor styles. So if you go to the page like this and go to edit with Elementor and then click on the menu once it loads like this is where we have these style settings. Next up, we have the integrations tab, and we haven't covered these integrations in much detail, but I just want to show you that they're there and that you can actually use them, and that this is the place where you have to enter in your information. And this works the same for all of the other different providers here as well, all of the different mailing services, and also something like Adobe fonts if you want to use something like that. So just so that you know that you can actually do this here. Again, I will probably be either adding a different section to this course, or I'll be creating an additional course that goes into more detail on these kinds of integrations later on as well. So check that out once that comes out. But now let's go on to the advanced tab to check that out as well. Now here we have some of the more technical options you have in Elementor, and I want to show you some of them that might cause you problems when you're creating your website. So the first one, I'll definitely leave that on. So definitely leave that as external file, because that's just much better for your load times and just for the generally for your website. Sometimes you might want to switch the loader method, but usually you don't need that, so keep that disabled as well. For the file uploads, sometimes if you, for example, want to upload your custom icons like SVGs, then this won't work because this setting isn't enabled. And the reason that this isn't enabled by default is because there are some security risks with these types of files, because you can have like malicious code in them if you're not careful. But usually if you're just trying to like add in your own icons to the website and you get the icons from somewhat trusted source of yours, then there should be no problem. And then you have to turn this on in order to enable these uploads. Now this option is actually something that is also often a problem, and I'll show you where it actually is a problem on our page as well. So if we go to the blog, I have to go out of this, and if we go to the blog and click on one of the articles right here, you see this icon here for the time is actually not being displayed properly. And that's because of the Font Awesome 4 library, which we have to load the support script for. It's not loaded by default, and you don't know what it's really about. It's just something that if you are facing some of these issues with the icons, that the default icons from Elementor not displaying correctly, just turn this on, save your changes, and then we'll go back to the website. And now you see this actually loads properly. So that's an issue that you're often facing. Also, when you have like a drop-down menu in the in your header, that's also something that's often coming up there. So just keep that in mind if you have this problem. Now lastly, a pretty recent introduction from Elementor is the experiments feature. And that's also something that you want to be careful with, because it allows you to actually activate experimental features in Elementor on your website, which also might cause you problems. So my recommendation, if you are not too comfortable with your WordPress website yet, would be to not activate them, so to have them inactive. and yeah, just leave them like that, because these might turn into problems if you don't know what you're doing, and you might be facing some bugs on your website with these. Alright, so now we'll go through some of these settings in the Elementor editor itself. So we'll just go to our front page as well, click on Edit with Elementor, and now we'll go back into this little menu and we'll go to the site settings. Now down here are a couple of things that we haven't covered yet. Some of them also include some of the styling options, but also other things that might be just helpful if you don't know where they actually are. So first of all, we have the site identity, which we talked about already. This is where you can add in your site name, your site description, your site logo, and your favicon if you have one. Then the second one is the background. This is where you can actually add in a consistent background for your entire website. So you could say you want the maybe you want the default color of your background to be, I don't know, blue or something, and then you could create a blue background for your entire website. Obviously, you usually just want it to be white, but in some occasions you might want to have some kind of different color as a background. Maybe you have like a dark theme, so you want like a dark background. So this is something you can set up in here. Next, we have the layout. This is where we earlier changed our content width. And obviously you can also change that if you want to. Then you also have the option to change the default widget space. So now, if you remember from earlier, we often were like working on the spacing. Maybe sometimes you want it to be a bit bigger, sometimes a bit smaller. So this is something that you can edit here if you have any preferences for this. Usually 20 pixels is a pretty decent size for this, so usually you don't want to, or you wouldn't want to change anything here, but you have the option to if you need to. For the next part of this, we're actually going to go back into our design system so that I can show you what I'm about to show you, which is the feature to enhance the lightbox. So what is a lightbox? Lightboxes are when you click on images and you enabled a lightbox to appear, like we can do right here. So we could say media file, and then we'll say lightbox yes. Now if I click on this image, we get this image like as a big screen with some additional options, like to make it bigger, or to share the image, or to close the lightbox again, things like this. And we can change the styling of this by going in here and going to the site settings, and then going to Lightbox and going over these changes. Now I won't go through this in more detail because it's pretty straightforward, and we have talked about so many styling cases that I think you will be fine doing this on your own, but I just wanted to mention it to you that you can actually do this in here as well. And lastly, something for the advanced users, or something that we might be covering in one of the next courses for the more advanced users, would be custom CSS. So you could have custom CSS codes in here for your entire site if you actually want to have some custom code in there. Now, going out of the site settings again, we're going to take a look at the user preferences we have. Also, something that might be quite nice for some people, you can set the panel width of this panel to a different size. So maybe you want a bigger panel like this, and then the panel actually is being resized like that. You can always drag this around, but you can also set the default for it. I usually just keep it at the normal size like that, but yeah, it really depends on what you want. Usually this is a bit buggy in some cases, so yeah, I'll just move this out again like that, and return to my normal panel size. Right. And now one more thing is also you could, if you want to, you could change the UI theme. So you could say you want this in dark mode as well. It's also possible, something that some people might want to use. So yeah, we'll just keep it on auto detect, but that's also another really useful option to have. And when we're already here and talking about all these options that Elementor has and some of the settings, I want to take the time to also cover some additional settings we have here. Just go over all of these different things that we can also do. So you have the option to upload custom fonts. I will probably be creating an additional content for this as well. You have the ability to upload custom icons. You can also add in custom codes. Again, don't worry about that, you don't need to do this. And also you can have you have a role manager, which means you can have different roles for your users in WordPress, and they can do different things based on their roles in Elementor as well. Again, something I'll probably be doing another video on. If you ever need help with your Elementor website and you want to contact the Elementor support, for example, you can go to the System Info tab here, and you see all the system information, which you can actually, if you go down here, download into a text file, and which you can then also send to the Elementor support so that they can provide better support for you. So that's just something, again, that is really, really useful, especially when you're a beginner and you might be facing some issues. Also, again, feel free, if you have any issues, to comment or to contact me, and I'll give my best to answer your questions and to help you out. And I think that about wraps up this video about the different settings and some of the problems you might be facing with Elementor when you're just starting out. Some of the things that might be hard to find if you've not been using this for too long. So I hope this video helped you out, and I'll see you in the next section of the course.